Yesterday we had talked about firewalls, IDS, and honeypots, and we had also seen the Windows Defender firewall. Now let's take a look at firewalls in Linux. So in Linux, this firewall is known as IP tables. Let me just share the screen. It says IP tables. Okay, I haven't specified a command. Now, if I want to see the list of current rules for IP tables, then I need to use the command IP tables hyphen L. So now this shows me three different sections or three different, you could say, chains, because Linux calls them chains for rules. Now we don't really have any rules, so all we do is we accept everything. We don't block any packets. These are the rules for input. This is the input chain. Currently there's nothing configured. The forward chain, okay, input chain is for all the packets that are, that are coming to your device. Your device is the destination. So for all such packets, the input rules would apply. Forward means that your device is not the destination, but it's just on the path of the message. So for that, the rule specified in this forward case that would apply. And output is when your device is sending messages. So all the rules in the output portion that would apply there. So these are the three different command chains or sections of rules in IP tables, which is the by default Linux firewall that comes pre-installed. So let's try adding or not removing. We don't really have any rules to remove. So let's just try adding something. Okay, before that, we have to talk about the three actions which you can take, that you can set. The first action is accept. So accept is going to, just like the name suggests, it's going to accept that traffic. Drop, second is drop. That means the traffic is not going to pass through. The traffic is going to be blocked. The third kind of action is reject. Reject is similar to drop, but it sends a message to the sender saying that the transfer has failed. So if I want to add some kind of option here, then I would do something like, let's say I want to drop something. So I would use the command sudo iptables. Now, let's say you want to set a rule for incoming traffic. Now we want to append this rule to the end of the chain, and for incoming traffic means the input section. So hyphen a is for append. Input means we are going to change the rule for incoming traffic. Now what I want to do is Let's say I want to block incoming traffic for a particular IP address. So hyphen S for the source IP, let's say, and hyphen J the action to perform. So I'm going to drop. Now if I do this again, I can see that there a rule has been added for the input chain. That rule is, okay, the target means the action to be taken, which is drop all protocols. So any packet coming from this source should be dropped. Now this is just an example. Okay, you can take any source that you want. That's up to you. If you want to change the action for an entire chain, let's say if you want to completely drop all the traffic that comes as an input, for that you can use sudo iptables hyphen p. P is used when you want to change the policy for a chain. Let's say input and drop. Okay, let me try this again. Why is it not showing the complete thing? Okay, let's try flushing all the rules out. Hyphen F, what it does is it flushes all rules outwards. So it flushes all the changes. That is, it resets all the rules that you have written. But that input policy change rule is still drop. Let's try connecting to the internet. Now this should be working at this time. Okay. I want to type something. Google.com is working right now. Let me test that. Am I not able to access the internet currently? It's active. Okay, so that must be because all the input data has been dropped. Let me reset that. So now you see what the issue was. We were telling our firewall to drop all the packets that were incoming. So in that case, we could not open anything because whatever reply we would receive, it would simply drop that. Now, if I do the same thing for output, let's say for output, I say drop. If I try to go to a website, let's try Google again. So server not found. Why? Because all outgoing traffic is being dropped. And I'll have to change this, otherwise internet will be inaccessible. Actually, no, not just the internet, any network service will be inaccessible if you don't allow output traffic. So similarly, there are a lot of things you can do. You can block IPs block incoming traffic from an IP, block outgoing traffic to an IP. You can also specify protocols, for example, TCP or UDP. Okay, now let me first let us check whether internet is working. Okay, so it is working. The issue that happened earlier was that we were dropping all packets, so it was not letting us connect to the internet. But now it is working. Okay, anyway. So now earlier we set a rule for this source IP to block any incoming traffic from this IP. Now let's say I also want to specify the protocol -p TCP. So now if I take a look at the table, so all incoming TCP traffic from this IP will be dropped. Let's say for output as well, I configure a rule. In this case, this will be the destination protocol. Let's say I just want to block for all protocols. Now if I take a look at the rules, so for all protocols, for any source, any traffic going to this destination should be blocked, should be dropped. And all incoming TCP traffic from this IP is blocked as well. So this is how firewalls work in Linux. You can configure as many rules as you want here. For now, I'm just going to flush all the changes, remove all the changes. So -F, and it is back to how it was before this, before I made all these changes. So just 1 minute. Now let's talk a little bit about evasion methods. So how you can evade firewalls. So let me just share the screen so you'll be able to see this document. Now, so we are going to take a look at a few detection techniques since this chapter is about evading firewalls. Now, as it says, it's very important to remember that there is no universal method to do this. So it's all based on trial and error. Depending on how your target's firewall or your ID or their IDS might be configured, these methods could work or they may not work. So firewall and IDS evasion is there's no short guarantee of being able to evade everything, but we can of course try, and we are going to look at a few methods for doing the same. So the first thing is a timing technique. Now, when we were discussing Nmap, I have already touched upon this timing technique. Okay, so you have the option of setting how fast or how slow you want your scans to be. So for a very fast scan, you can specify T5. For a very slow scan, you can specify T0, and of course the range of values in between, depending on the kind of speed you want to have. So the way this thing would work is that if you're running a slower scan, if you're running a scan at T0 or T1, that would send packets much less frequently than, let's say, a scan at T3 or T5. So it would spread the scan out over a larger period of time. So for a given amount of time, let's say per minute, T0 or T1 would send less scan probes than T4 or T5. So the idea behind this, sending less packets is so that your scans, your Nmap scans, they can hide behind this kind of, or not hide, maybe you want to blend in with normal traffic. So with a slower scan, you have a much higher chance of being able to blend in with normal traffic. But with a faster scan, if you're sending too many requests in a very short period of time, that is much easier to detect for an IDS and also for an IPS. If an IPS detects it, it may simply change the firewall rules and block your IP. So if you send packets gradually, it may, to the IDS or IPS, it may seem like, okay, this is just normal traffic. Some client machine is communicating with our server and they might be sending these packets. That's one technique to blend in with normal traffic, hide your scan. That's just one technique. Another thing is to fragment your packets. Okay, so during fragmentation, you split packets into smaller chunks. That makes it more difficult for an IDS to detect that there is a scan going on. Or maybe you send these fragments again at intervals so that the IDS will not wait long enough for those packets to reassemble, but your target, it may wait long enough for all those packets. So the IDS will discard any upcoming packets that are from this, any upcoming fragments from the same packet, but the destination or the target device that may be implementing a longer timeout. So it will wait for a longer time before discarding a fragment. So when that target receives all these fragmented packets, it is going to reassemble them, it's going to process that, and it's going to respond to your scan. So again, you can try to use this technique to get past IDSs as well. This may work in some cases, it might not work in some cases. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's all just trial and error. There is no guarantee, okay, you have no guarantee that there will be no firewall will be able to catch your packet, or there'll be no IDS will be able to catch your packets, because these things keep evolving. So what might work in one network or one configuration, that might not work for another. So that is something you have to keep in mind. Now, another technique is source port scanning. There are certain ports that you need to allow in order to let communication happen hassle free on your network. We've talked about what DNS is back in the first and second chapter. Now you have to allow DNS traffic, and DNS traffic comes from port 53. Similarly, you need to specify HTTP as port 80, HTTPS port 443. In this example, port 21 is also mentioned, which is for FTP. Now, FTP is one of those protocols which is not always used, so it might not be useful. But the other two, of course, 53 and 80, those are definitely very common, and most administrators will allow those ports through. So for your scans, you can specify that the port you are using is this. So for example, in Nmap, if you're talking about, the G parameter helps us specify source port. So in this case, we're using source port 53 to make it look like we're sending DNS traffic. So Nmap hyphen G hyphen P for port 53, and your this IP. And all of these things that I'm discussing, these options, the G parameter, the hyphen F for fragmenting packets, this timing technique, this is all very easily available in the Nmaps help menu. But I didn't cover it then because that when I discussed Nmap first, because this is more relevant for this chapter. Then you can specify custom MTU. MTU is the MTU stands for maximum transmission unit. Maximum transmission unit, that is the size of your packet. So the values that can be defined as MTU are multiples of 8. Nmap allows us to specify our own MTU. So you can specify custom packet size, and based on your input, Nmap will generate the packets. Now if you specify 32, Nmap will generate a 32 byte packet. So like I said, MTU is the size of the packet that is going to be generated. Now you can keep changing this and try to see whether the target is allowing packets with random sizes or not, because sometimes firewalls may be configured to only block packets for particular sizes, but they may allow packets size differently. So even that option Nmap is giving you. Sending bad checksum, and we're discussing all these things in Nmap because these are easy to do with Nmap. All of these commands are easy to run with Nmap. And the first thing that you do on a target with regards to the point where you're trying to bypass a firewall or an IDS is when you're running a scan. So that's why we need to take a look at these things with respect to how we can do them while scanning. Sending a bad checksum. Okay, now checksum is something that is a part of the TCP header. Earlier, I had mentioned that in any packet, there are two parts. One is the header, which contains some information about that packet, and the other is the data contained in that packet. Now, in the TCP header, of course, you also have all of these things like source port, destination port, all the flags, and of course, there's a field for checksum as well. So this is used in error detection. We can use an incorrect checksum. We can specify a bogus or fake checksum, and by sending these incorrect checksums, we may be able to bypass some firewalls depending on the rule sets and how they are configured. So for that, you use nmap double hyphen bad sum and the target IP. Another option is to use decoys. Now decoys would mean using a fake IP. So it is very effective when you want to use stealth, and you're basically trying to use spoofed packets from other hosts, which would make it difficult for administrators to detect the actual origin of the scan. This can also cause a denial of service, like it says here. So use the hyphen D option, hyphen capital D option in Nmap and RND 10. So this is going to generate a 10 random decoys. Okay, no, sorry, random number of decoys. All right, for the target IP. So to the target, it would appear that these requests are coming from multiple IP addresses. This can also be used in case you know that your IP is blocked. But for that, I mean, you of course have VPNs and stuff. So in that case, this is not that effective. I mean, this is not that good in such a case. You can simply use a VPN or a proxy if your IP is blocked. But that is just one possible use case. Okay, just excuse me for a minute. I'll come back and continue. Okay, am I audible now? Yes. See, so I'll just go over what I've done. So the techniques that we've already discussed, I'm using that to perform scans now. So the first thing that I did, take a look here, nmap -f for fragmentation. I wanted to fragment my scan probes. Double hyphen MTU, this specifies the MTU size, so you can use both these commands together. Okay, there's no restriction. Then I specified the MTU size, so 32 bytes, and my target, which is scanme.nmap.org. So in this result, I got 982 filtered ports. 982 filtered ports means filtered, meaning there was a firewall blocking them. But I did get the other 18 ports, and I was able to figure out whether they were open or closed. If I just ran a normal scan without using that, I'm getting 997 filtered ports, getting the result only from 3 ports. So using our fragmentation techniques, we are already able to bypass to some extent on some different ports. Then I used another technique. What I did is I specified the source port, I spoofed the source port, and in this case I specified port 53, which is used by DNS. So this was the source port for my scan probes, my scan packets. Again, the same target, and you can see I'm getting 4 ports as answers here, and these ports are different from the results that we've seen previously. Now again, 996 ports are filtered, but we're still able to get through to a few different ports than what we saw in our previous scans. Excuse me. So one thing is for sure, that if I am to combine the results of these different scans, okay, a normal scan, a scan with fragmented packets, scan with a spoofed source port, if I combine these results, I will get a much more comprehensive idea about the state of ports on the target system than if I were to just use a normal scan. So we are already seeing the benefit of this kind of thing. Let's check out what else we have left, what other methods there are to check. Now the timing thing, okay, again a T0 and a T1 scan is very slow, so it won't necessarily end on time. So you can try that out on your own. Sending a bad checksum. Okay, now I'm going to try sending a bad checksum. So for that as well, Nmap gives me an option, and that option is this bad sum. Send packets with a bogus checksum. So let's try that. Nmap and double hyphen bad sum and the target. It seems down. So apparently it's not responding. Okay, what we'll try to do is just block our ping probes, because we don't want a bad checksum for the ping probes. Maybe that will is causing this issue. So we'll just skip pinging. So we are using -pn. I'm telling Nmap don't ping, just directly port scan. Excuse me. So it says all 1,000 scan ports are filtered. So this technique did not work here. Like I said, this is largely based on trial and error. There is no guarantee that any technique is going to definitely work for a particular domain or for a particular firewall or a particular IDS configuration or not. You just need to try. If it does work, that's well and good. If it does not, then there's nothing that can be done about it. So again, there's the timing thing as well. That is one of the major ways through which you can evade detection. Is just try a T1 scan, see how much time it takes. Because okay, I'll just keep P and I know this website is up already. I don't need to ping it. Now I'm not using T0 because that will literally take hours to run. About 10%, not even 10%, 0.1%, sorry. Okay. So, like I said, these timing scans can take a lot of time. I've actually used these scans and they can take up to 5-6 hours to complete. So, and that is for T1. T0 can take an entire day. But it is one of the best techniques for this kind of thing, evading firewalls and IDSs. Now, honeypots. Okay, when we come to talk about honeypots, so based on the our previous sessions, do you understand what a honeypot is? Or is there any confusion regarding that? Are you all clear about honeypots? Do you all understand what honeypots are? If there's any confusion, please ask. If not, then I'll continue talking about what I want to say. Excuse me. Okay, so not for you. Okay, and since I am not getting any questions, I'm going to go ahead and say what I'm talking about. So, with regards to honeypots, now the name of the chapter is Evading IDSs, Firewalls, and Honeypots. Firewalls and IDSs can be evaded. There are techniques, we have discussed that. But honeypots, okay, it's not easy to find out whether a particular system is a honeypot or not. It's not very easy for you to figure that out because that's the whole point. A honeypot is built in a way so that attackers fall for it. Attackers are trapped. Not trapped actually, it's not like you can't leave the honeypot. That attackers are lured towards it. So it's made in such a way that it attracts attackers. So by design, a honeypot is not meant to be evaded. But of course, as an attacker, you need to think about what to do in this case. So detecting a honeypot is something that is somewhat difficult. The thing is, as soon as you scan a honeypot, okay, now before you reach a device, you cannot know what it is. You know that, okay, there is an IP address, there's a target that you need to scan. But whether that target is a honeypot or not, you do not know unless you scan it first. So for that, the best thing to do while you're running a scan for the first time, you don't know whether the target is a honeypot or it isn't. So you should do your best to hide your source IP, your source MAC, because what a honeypot does is it collects all this data about any potential attackers that might be scanning it or any potential attackers that might be trying to attack it. So the action of scanning the honeypot itself can give you away. That's why if you're scanning a target for the first time, you need to make sure that you hide your actual IP, use proxies, use VPNs, hide your MAC address. Now, okay, let's say you've done all that and now you run a scan and you found that there are a number of services that are running. If it's a low interaction honeypot, now as I discussed with low interaction honeypots, they do not actually have any of these services running. It just appears as if those services are running. So, what will happen in that case is, if you see that there's a few particular services running, let's say there's FTP, your scan results show that FTP is running. But when you try to connect to that FTP service, you are going to be denied any connection. Okay, maybe you think that FTP port is blocking any requests at that point, or it's not allowing your IP to connect. So you try other services. But if you cannot connect to services, if you see that your scan is showing you services running, but you are unable to actually connect to these services, that may be an indication that your target is in fact a honeypot. So that is one way to do things. And there are a couple of tools that can be used for finding out whether a honeypot is whether your target is actually a honeypot or not. One tool which is also mentioned in the PDF is SendSafe Honeypot Hunter. I'm going to type that in this chat. And another tool, it's actually a domain. Let me, I think I should show you that domain. Or actually, I think it's better to call it a tool. So let me just share the screen here. Now there is a tool by, it's run by Shodan, and it's called Honeypot or Not. So if you enter any IP address, it will tell you whether that IP is a honeypot or not. It will try its best to figure out whether the entered IP is a honeypot or not. So let's take the IP that we used for that we saw for scanme.nmap.org. Let's see what it says in that case. So I've just copy pasted that IP here. So it's saying it looks like a real system, and that is the case. This IP is not a honeypot, it's a real system, therefore scanning. So excuse me. This is also a tool, an online tool by Shodan. So the URL is honeyscore.shodan.io. The name of the tool is honeypot or not. So you can enter an IP and it'll try to figure out whether that IP is a honeypot or a control system. A real control system, as in a real server or a real system that is accessible over the internet. So these are a couple of methods you can use to find out whether your target is honeypot or not. But otherwise, it can be very, very difficult to figure out whether a target is a honeypot. And that is the intention of a honeypot itself, to not be very obvious that it's a honeypot. Any questions? No? Okay. So there is this project, HoneyNet project. Okay. The HoneyNet project. So this, I mean, it's a project. These are a group of people who try to come up with different kinds of honey nets. Sorry, honey pots. And a honey net is simply a network of honey pots. These are different projects and tools that are used as honey pots. You can check these out as well. So, for example, there's this Glutton generic low interaction honey pot, the project on GitHub. So, if you go to, you follow this link, this is the GitHub link for that project. Now, this is just one project I selected at random and came to this thing. Now, simply what you'll be doing is you set up a server and run this project on a server. Now it should be publicly accessible. It should have a public IP, and then you can use it as a honeypot. Similarly, there are other projects that you can check out. So there's this corn pot. So again, this is a low interaction industrial control systems honeypot, and they have a special website as well. You can check out the code at GitHub. So Cornpot is an ICS honeypot with a goal to collect intelligence about the motives and methods of adversaries targeting industrial control systems. I think the website might be down. The GitHub page is up and running. You can get this project from here. So you can take a look at this website. They have papers as well, workshops. I don't think there will be any workshops running right now. Okay. Challenges, the challenges that they face. Okay, this is CTFs actually. You can, I don't think they have done this recently, but you can go to this website if you're interested in learning more about honeypots. This is a good resource, so you can check it out. Excuse me. So the URL is honeynet.org. I've pasted that in the chat as well. So that's it for today's session.